Let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to a wonderful audience who have joined us from different time zones across the world. My name is Neha Sebastian, a digital marketing specialist at WATI. And on behalf of WATI's team, I welcome you all to this webinar on cloud security or lack of it, threat vector 1. So a little about the webinar. This is going to be a 60-minute session followed by a Q&A session during which you can ask your questions and our speakers will answer it for you. Please post your questions using the chat anytime during the webinar and our speakers will answer them in the Q&A session. So due to any constraint, if your questions were not answered during this webinar, please drop us an email at info@wati.com with your query and we will be getting back to you. So we also have a couple of quizzes lined up during the webinar and those who type the correct answer first using the chat section would be given a small gift, which is an Amazon gift card. So here we go. These are our speakers for today. Our first speaker, Srini Veeramasu, the president of WATI, will be sharing his insights on the shared responsibility of cloud security. And our second speaker for today, Sudhir Kanumali, the cybersecurity practice head at WATI, will provide his insights on how cloud exploits typically happen and cover critical protection points in your cloud attack surface. So I'll hand it over to the first speaker for today. Over to you, Srini.
Thank you, Neha. Hello, everyone. This is Srini Veeramasu. I work for WATI. As Neha said, we have folks joining from several different time zones. In fact, some are even from outside of US. I just want to make sure, I'm audible and you are all, able to see my screen. Excellent. So thank you very much for joining this webinar. In fact, we are super excited to bring this event to you. And we are going to discuss the most important topic that's going around in the industry today, which is cloud security and how cloud has become #1 threat vector for the enterprises. But before we get there, I'll just take a minute to give an introduction of who we are and some of our background. So we are WATI. Full name is West Advanced Technologies. We are a California corporation. We are in business long enough, to be precise, 24 years. And we work with hundreds of government agencies, technology companies, and commercial enterprises. Many of them are in the US though. And cybersecurity is a focus area at WATI. And as you can see in this image, there are quite a few things in cybersecurity. And we kind of put them broadly in 4 buckets: security testing, security compliance, SOC managed services, and training. And so we have been quite active in the event circuit, cybersecurity events. We have been doing a lot of boot camps. In fact, most of them are free of cost. I see many attendees, some of the names are familiar. So those of you that are kind of, have attended our prior events, we welcome you back. So please do take advantage of our events. We are quite active and very frequent with these events. And we also do webinars with, industry thought leaders and C-level executives, all in the cybersecurity space. In addition, we also conduct quite a few of customized programs, be it boot camps, maybe for secure development coding practices, or maybe certification-oriented training programs for developers, InfoSec managers, or management, that kind of thing. So we have a fast-growing practice here. As you can see in this image, in cybersecurity, we pretty much cover end-to-end, across all your assets. I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, now back to the topic. So cloud security and who is responsible for it, by the way. Interesting thing is we work with so many, customers, and some of them actually work on the cutting edge of technology. Even they, do not give a consistent reply when we ask this question: who is responsible for cloud security? So before we answer this question, I think let's look at a little bit of background. So we all know, cloud has transformed our industry. When it's our industry, information technology industry. So you can spin up the infrastructure that you need in just a matter of minutes, and you can spin down what you don't need, as quickly. You can take your, applications to production almost in a blink of an eye. So that kind of agility, that kind of convenience, it wasn't there before. It's unprecedented. Because of that, obviously, everyone is moving into the cloud. Cloud adoption is, almost an exponential rise. But there is one other reason also contributing to cloud adoption rise, which is the perceived security. So most of us come from, on-prem world, so when you are on-prem, you are responsible for everything, your hardware, software, network, applications, data, everything. So when you move to cloud, you kind of subconsciously assume that, your cloud provider is taking care of some of the response, security aspects. So this is where I think there's not a lot of discussion. So a lot of assumptions are there. So the typical mindset is you are in cloud, you are secure. So I think in this webinar, we'll discuss, how far those assumptions are right. But at the same time, the proof is in the pudding, right? If cloud providers are taking care of all the security aspects, there won't be any cloud breaches. But we hear of cloud breaches almost on a daily basis, the mega breaches. So something is definitely happening, So let's discuss who is responsible for cloud security. Yeah, this is a kind of a quite crowded slide, but we'll kind of go through it in some detail. Just please bear with me. It's a cloud is like a shared responsibility. Just like how you have your vehicle, your home. There is a key given to you, so that's a tool for you to keep it safe. But it is for you to actually lock it when you're not using it, or when you're kind of staying away from it. So unauthorized users, do not, get near it or get into it. So the responsibility is shared between the manufacturer of the product and then you. Likewise, the cloud also, it's much the same way. It's a shared responsibility. There are some aspects of cloud provider is responsible, and the rest of it, you are responsible. When I say you, we all are, as cloud users. So in cloud, essentially there are three kinds of deployment models, right? We have, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. So let's start with IaaS. This is where you are kind of, adopting and migrating workloads to the cloud. So here you are actually responsible for, much larger stack compared to other two models. Cloud provider takes care of security for hypervisor on down, and you are responsible for everything above that, be it operating systems, applications, workloads, data. And on the other extreme, if you look at a SaaS model, the cloud provider takes care of much more in the stack, but you still have some responsibility though. What is that? Your data is number one responsibility. And access privileges, who has access to what? That's your second responsibility. And the third one is, of course, the endpoints, and a bit more like that. So in between these two is your third model, which is PaaS model, platform as a service. Here, your responsibilities are kind of, even between cloud provider and us as cloud users. So, the cloud provider takes care of, security of the platform, which is, the runtime, the containers, the isolation, whereas you are responsible for applications, workloads, and data. Yeah, that was a lot of information. I hope I did not confuse. But as you can see on this image, the cloud provider, which is labeled in the green color, and the blue is a user, folks like us. So depending on the deployment model, the responsibilities are identified here. Most of us consume more than one type of cloud, right? We all, you're using Microsoft 365, you're using, Google Drive, you are SaaS. And you are kind of spinning up virtual machines on the cloud, you are IaaS. So you're using, let's say, Salesforce kind of applications, you're PaaS. So it's very common for most of us using, more than one, or maybe, all of them. So it's important to remember, who is responsible for what, so you can kind of do your housekeeping accordingly. But there's one point I would like to say though, regardless of the type of deployment model that you use, there are certain things you are always responsible, and it helps for you to remember this. What you're responsible for is data. Across all models, you're responsible for data. You are responsible for who has access to what, access privileges. You are responsible for endpoints. At minimum, these three things, you are always responsible, right? So this is the image. This is actually image published by Amazon. So there are two terms, you want to know in the context of cloud security: security of the cloud and security in the cloud. So what's the difference? The bottom half of the image is security of the cloud. So it is on the side of the cloud provider. So they take care of these things. So security is their problem. And in the top half of the image is security in the cloud. That is our responsibility as users. So, so of course we discussed, different deployment models and all that. But this kind of image is there for all major cloud vendors, whether you're using Google or using, Microsoft Azure or AWS or maybe anything else. This model is the same. There are some parts cloud providers are responsible, the rest we are responsible. So hope, I clarified that point of shared responsibility. So now some fun quiz. We just, inserted some of these quizzes to make the sessions, a little more lively and interactive. Hope you'll enjoy this format, because we have been doing so many boot camps. Somehow, we find a lot of enthusiasm when there are some quizzes online like this. Okay. All right. So coming to the question. So which of the following demands little less security responsibility from cloud users? Is it SaaS, PaaS, yes? So please post your response in the chat window. And the winners will be announced at the end of this webinar. Remember, the one who types the answer fastest rather, will get to be identified as the winner. All right. So with that, I will pass it on to my colleague, Sudhir. So we have understood cloud is shared responsibility. The Sudhir is going to talk about what is causing cloud breaches, why is it a problem, and what are the ways and means to kind of solve or put our hands around the problem. Right? Sudhir, over to you, please.
Hi, Srini. Thank you. Yeah, as Srini rightly said, cloud is a shared responsibility, and we have to understand this actually. Let me start sharing my screen. Let me take you through some of the root causes of the cloud breaches. They are mostly from misconfigurations and default configurations and native security controls and rapidly changing cloud security demands. What are they, and tools and approaches for the cloud security. Let's quickly go into misconfigurations. Misconfiguration accounts, 78% of the breaches, even Gartner accounts the same. And most of the time, all misconfigurations arises either a lack of a knowledge or we are in very much hurry to create a policies and assets. Many of the cloud platforms has more than 2,000 controls in their environment. It is hard to configure for anyone in an appropriate way. And the common misconfiguration challenges are specifically from identity and access management, especially on storage and databases. Especially when it comes to storage, poorly configured S3 will be, especially when if you don't configure S3 bucket with the proper encryption and proper access management, that tend to publicly accessible, not online, that causes serious breaches. When it comes to databases, there is always a misconception that moving database to cloud native is very straightforward, and however, many fail to realize that cloud native databases are not built for traditional security layers and required access management not only at user levels but also an application level. Let's go to quickly some of the numbers. in our lab, we found that 78% of the breaches are from misconfigurations, mostly are from identity and access management, and 58% are from unauthorized access, mostly are from application vulnerabilities and system vulnerabilities and credential compromise of an employee via phishing attacks or something like that. And 52% are from insecure APIs, especially when in some cases, developer creates an APIs without authentication. As a result, these interfaces are completely open to internet. Anyone can use them to exploit. And most of the time, and 50% of what we see is from hijacked accounts, especially from a stolen credentials from the dark web and man-in-the-middle attacks. They can sniff an ongoing request to gain an access. And 43% of the time, we see these data sharing techniques will go into vain, especially we have to always encrypt between sender and receiver with AES standards or best recommended. Let's come to least DDoS attacks. DDoS attacks are most common attacks on the cloud. Use always WAF and subscribe to DDoS scrubbing centers, and DDoS dedicated solutions are always recommended. Let's quickly move to next slide. Let's talk about one of the most threat vector, number one, and attack vector. Most of the attackers can triage a cloud infra from internet via DNS enumerations by exploiting vulnerabilities in VPC. They can quickly move to vulnerable EC2. Then they can call metadata services. It allows to get information on compute infrastructure without having embedded things like secrets inside of it. And then by crawl of a security credentials, get to access keys and the secret keys, and we can list the S3 bucket. By using sync command, we can easily get data extracted out. We can see some of the examples like unrestricted outbound access. We have to give always unrestricted outbound access only to IPs that is required, and HTTP and HTTPS ports. We should allow only HTTPS ports. So that too, what is IPs that is required to our employees. And unrestricted inbound access to uncommon ports like TCP and UDP ports. Those has to be restricted to IP addresses that is required. Let's talk about some of the recent breaches. The largest one of the customer, what we saw is they got exposed 137 gigabytes of data, and mostly we have found that in a backup database backup, and nearly 40,000 passwords were stored, and majority were in plain text. Just imagine an attacker gets 40,000 of a stolen creds. What the breach, catastrophe of a breach will be. In another breach, we didn't see that any of the method, but the stolen IAM keys or AWS keys from IAM role called WAF role, and the attacker by the stolen keys, he listed that particular S3 bucket, and he is able to access via that role, and he is exfiltrated the data by using the sync command. And he is completely natted all the customer data that is there in that particular S3 bucket. And it's a quiz time. Please post your answers in chat. Who is responsible for identity misconfigurations in cloud platform? A, cloud service users, B, cloud service providers, C, both, D, none of the above. Who can ping fast? They'll get an Amazon vouchers, and Neha will announce who is the winner. Yeah, let's quickly move into next topics. Very interesting. Default configurations. Many of the time, we don't look into default configurations as a threat. Why? Because every cloud platform has a default configurations, and every security vendor has a default configurations. And what happens is, what happens is we saw some of the users who was creating EC2 instances, and many of the time they are spinning VMs with the default configurations that will impact user machines. If let us say if any of one of the user who has got an access to EC2 has got compromised, and with that compromise, an attacker gain an advantage and he can move laterally into some other accounts. Default configuration is always a big hurdle to control over end user actions, actually. Some of the best practices for the default configurations are ensure no root user account exists, because AWS access keys provide a programmatical access to a given AWS account. It is all recommended that all access keys associated with the root account to be removed. Ensure IAM password policies prevents password reuse. This increases account resiliency against brute force login attempts. And ensure MFA to be enabled, especially IAM users who has a console passwords. By enabling it, you can protect from credential compromise in the endpoints. Especially, you have to ensure S3 bucket policies that has to allow only HTTPS requests by default, and sometimes these default configurations we will allow both. Actually, HTTPS uses TLS to encrypt data, which preserves integrity and prevents tampering. And ensure access keys are rotated every 90 days or lesser, rotating every month in order to decrease the likelihood of an accidental exposure to protect your AWS resources against unauthorized access. Let's move into quickly native security controls. Native security controls really has a very good advantages, especially when it comes to easy of deployment, easy of management, and automation and correlation, and especially on the auto scaling. But still, there are some of the crucial areas we need to be addressed, especially how quick I see misconfigurations, how do I handle exemptions, and how can I see findings from different accounts, and what about the multi-cloud? Let's take it AWS and Azure and Google platforms, and AWS is CloudWatch and GuardDuty and Security Hub and Amazon Inspector and all. Most of the times what we do is, let's say GuardDuty costs us $2,000 per user. And if you want an full context-based functionalities in a GuardDuty, we have to turn it on, and it costs us $4,000. Usually most of the customers, they don't turn on full-fledged functionalities of the native security controls. And that is also one of the biggest hurdle that we are not able to utilize full-fledged native security controls. I think it's a quiz time again. Will native security controls work for multi-cloud? If yes, works 100%, doesn't work at all, and we have another option, works partially for its own cloud. Please post your answer in the chat. So winners will be announced. Let's quickly move on to next slides. What are the cloud security demands? So this is a very vast topic and debatable topic. Most of the organizations could not keep up their cloud security demands, actually. There are several major reasons to it because of a shadow IT and cloud workloads and accounts are being created outside of IT visibilities, especially, for example, and marketing spins up an instance with a third party for a marketing campaign. And due to non-proper decommissioning, these assets can turn into a rogue, and even IT and security team is not even aware of to take care of them. We saw in one of the customer place, the marketing team has forgot, and their MongoDB has natted online. And they forgot completely to decommission that, and after 6 months that MongoDB somebody has exploited, and they have gained an access into entire cloud, and that breach has become a very catastrophic. Especially when it comes to third-party data accesses, incomplete control over who is accessing sensitive data, especially third-party applications that is connected to our applications and databases like Salesforce. So many applications are there, and the best example is the SolarWinds hack that has got affected. When SolarWinds has got affected, and we also got affected. Especially skill set crunch and lack of staff with the skills that to secure cloud infrastructure is due to rapid growth and innovations. Due to lack of training and specialized skills that is available in the market, and due to emerging new security tactics, adversaries is always learning the new security tactics, but we are left behind. Especially when it comes to multi-cloud environment, some of the major challenges are from a governance issue. As a company, we want to govern by all the clouds in the same way, but each cloud has a different silos and different tools, and they have different mechanisms, different policies, different procedures, and all those stuff. So that creates a mess within the organization. Especially operations and management, it is the biggest pain. And we have seen the lack of application management also, it's create a big mess in a multi-cloud environment, because the same application owner has a different clouds and access to it, and they have a different controls has to, they have to take care of different controls as well. And there are some monitoring challenges also there, because inability to monitor multi-cloud workload systems and applications, especially on the vulnerability front. When it comes to vulnerabilities in real time, it is always recommended to detect vulnerabilities in real time to reduce cloud attack surface, which narrows down our incident and response strategy. Here are some of the use cases, especially on misconfigurations and vulnerabilities, access control vulnerabilities, shared tenancy vulnerabilities, and supply chain vulnerabilities. Their list goes on. This comes to some of the tools and approaches on recommendations. We recommend CAS benchmark best practices has to be followed always, because those comes from subject matter experts. Recommendations always help to secure our environment, and it provides us recommendations on identity and access management, storage, logging, and monitoring. And leveraging open source tools is always a good deal, especially on tools like OS Query and Graspel for incident and response, and Panther for malicious behavior. These tools will give use context-based graphical user interfaces, and it helps us to look our cloud what native security controls are missing really. Especially when it comes to vulnerability management, the rate of change is often very much higher in the cloud environment when you compare to on-premises, and those consistent changes can leave traditional vulnerability management process, especially into dust. The common vulnerable areas are data access and application OS and operating systems and networks. The list goes on. And periodic checks will reduce organization risk levels and a significant attack surface. Especially third-party periodic assessments is one we have to always take care. And I'll say a very straightforward statement. What we can't, an attacker can. I always this a phrase. So many a times what we can't see in our organization and an attacker can see. Similarly, what we cannot identify the gaps, a third party will, because of their expertise and experience by seeing multi-clouds and multiple customers and multiple platforms, so on and so forth. And we recommend third-party continuous security assessments and audits, especially because when you do an audits and assessments continuously, there will be a specific attributes of an information system, and comparing these results and with the measurements, that is what we get in your organizations or customer organizations. So that we can always compare what is the best practice recommendations and where are we. That delta can pull up very quickly. The results of continuous process are shared in real time, which customer in a way that protects the cloud very confidently. Building an security operation center, especially it reduces the risk of meantime detection and response in case of an incident. Many of times we see security operation center in cloud doesn't work like traditional. It isn't as an on-prem because incident response in cloud are very much different, and the change request in cloud is very much different. It is like as traditional SOC, we don't get always malwares and we don't get always incidents flagged. Most of the incidents are from misconfigurations and vulnerabilities exist within the network. About us, with all risk associated with the security aspects of the cloud, we always needs to be secured and monitored. We provide exactly the same services to our customers, and we provide compliances of NIST and HIPAA, CIS, and we follow the best practices of AWS Foundation, and we have a very big lab. We can continuously research on the exploits or the top exploits on the cloud, on all the cloud platforms. And we always focus on the continuous cloud security assessments that respond security incidents in real time. Not only in the real time, we have a very good forensic capabilities that we can do forensics and cloud assessment in real time. Especially we have automated 450 plus controls, best practices, and 150 critical manual checks. We do it in every assessment. That's our recommendation. That's what we are expertise of.
All right. So first and foremost, I think there are some winners for the quizzes, and thank you all for being, so sporty and then participate in this. It always makes these sessions fun. The first quiz, the winner is Philip Padgett. The second quiz winner is Harry O'Loughlin. Third quiz, Jayashree Kasukurthi. Congratulations to the winners, and there are correct responses, many more that have come, but Philip, Harry, and Jayashree, they responded fastest. So yeah, big applause to the winners. And I also see quite a few questions coming in, and I don't know how much time we will have, but then at least we'll run through some of those. And if there are still some questions that we are not able to address in this webinar, please do drop an email. You can see the email address here on the screen. We will respond to you individually. And one other thing before I get to the questions, if you are not already doing it, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Because we are quite active in cybersecurity space, so we publish a lot of material, be it blogs or guides, and we conduct events. Most of them are, the free of cost. So it's a ton of information we put out there. So the best way to know what we are doing, what we are publishing, is to kind of follow us on LinkedIn, because we stay up to date on LinkedIn. That's all right. So ready for questions? So Sudhir, I think all these questions are for you. I don't see any for me. So you're the star of the day.
Yeah, Srini. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what are open source tools to identify the open S3 buckets? Are they good? How good are they?
Yes, see, you don't get all the results in one tool, and you have to use multiple tools, so especially tools like Sandcastle, S3 and S3 Scanner or Lazy S3. So the four tools, they are very good tools, and it depends upon the cloud-specific platform. We have to use the tools. Yes, Srini. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I hope so too. So the next question. Okay, you scared us, by talking so much about cloud security problems, vulnerabilities. But what are the tools to use to stay secure?
See, cloud is a rapidly evolving field. Okay, there are some traditional players and there are some new age technology vendors. Broadly, cloud security tools can be classified as a CASP or a cloud workload protection or security posture management, etc., etc. And there are multiple vendors in each category. Which category of tools or which vendors to choose is a process of discovery and the fitment uh, to the business needs. Actually, based on our business needs, we can choose the tools on these categories.
Okay, so in other words, you are saying it's a very customized process. So a particular tool works for one, may not work for everyone.
Yes, yes, Srini. Yeah.
So there are tools. Okay, all right. Then on to the next question. Any best practices on third-party security audits of the cloud?
Cloud security alliances is best practices are there. CIS 1.3 is there. CIS 1.4 is there. And we recommend, I always recommend continuous monitoring is definitely required as a third-party audits. The frequency as it possible, because if we do continuous audits, so then we'll come to know what is exact. Continuous audits improves the process fitment also within the organization. At least we have to do it minimally, quarterly at least.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so one other question. So you talked of shadow IT. So it is scary. So is there a way to actually find out, discover them, if any such pockets exist in our systems?
Yes, we can. Only way we have to think like an attacker or an adversary. We always monitor our own cloud attack surface continuously. There are a lot of attack surface management tools available in the market. By scanning whole internet with the keywords of our organizations, with IPs of our organizations, so we can see the results in a surface web and a dark web and all. We can get all the alerts from there, and we can see what's happening at a dark communications about our organization.
Excellent. Excellent. So thank you for those clarifications, Sudhir. Much appreciated. So I think Neha, maybe if you can take over from here.
Sure, Sri. So thank you, Srini and Sudhir, for an insightful presentation. So I will recap the winners of the quizzes. Quiz 1, for which the correct option is A. The winner is Philip Padgett. And quiz 2, which the correct option is A again, is Harry O'Loughlin. And quiz 3, the correct option is C, for which the winner is Jayashree Kaskurti. So congratulations to the winners once again. We will be sharing the e-gift cards with you on your respective emails. So thank you for attending our webinar. Please share your feedback with us using the link provided, or you could also scan the code which is present on the screen, and you will be taken to the feedback page. So in case your questions were not answered today, please do drop us an email with your query on info@wati.com. and we will be getting back to you. So we hope you liked the webinar. Stay tuned for more such upcoming webinars by WATI. And thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you all.